Is this better than what you had before?
Looking at it right now, it's clearly better. I mean, I'd either get sort of a gusher of ink or
I mean, I
nothing.
just dipped it, so it's like it isn't a
Yeah.
wet writer, but like that to me looks right.
Fantastic.
So
Love it.
someone's gonna love that.
Yep. Oh, in fact, he's in North Carolina.
Yeah. All right.
This is Tim Ettenheim, one of my oldest friends in the pen world. In fact, it was Tim who first introduced me to the joys of vintage pen repair. And today we're going to do something I have not done in years, which is visit Tim in his shop in New York City. We'll hang out, I'll fix some nibs, he'll fix some pens, and we'll talk about some of our favorite vintage European pens, like the Aurora 88, pens from France, and some others. So come along and geek out with us right now. I'm Joshua Lax, fountain pen user, collector,
A bit like Ollivanders, right?
and all-around fanatic. In fact, I'm so obsessed I started a business where I get to work with other people's pens. And now I want to share with you everything I love about the world of fountain pens. From the new pens, to the old pens, the nibs, the ink, the paper, and of course, the people. This is Uncapped. Tim owns and operates timsvintagepens.com. On this website, he sells pens that he restores. He offers pens on consignment. He also offers some restoration services. He has some advice about caring for vintage pens. And he has a blog where he talks about his experiences restoring vintage pens. And actually, that's what we're going to start with. He's going to show us how he actually fabricates parts for an old pen.
All right, so I'm about to start working on a piece of ebonite, which is the American name for hard rubber. In pen world, it's almost always called HR or hard rubber, and this is what rougher ebonite, Indian ebonite, looks like when it's in its not yet worked on form. And I'm here at my lathe. You're probably wondering what a lathe does. A lathe is what makes industry work. It is the only way in one form or another that you can make something that is truly round. And by round, I mean round enough to not create heat and friction when it touches something that it's working against. Frankly, in our world, we would not have a single machine without lathes that made its round and turning parts. Nothing can turn without a lathe. So what this does is, as you'll see when I start turning it, is that this piece of ebonite looks round, but in fact it isn't. It's close enough within a few thousandths of an inch, but by the time I'm ready to work on it, I need to know exactly how wide its diameter is. And if I look at it right now, it is showing 435 thousandths of an inch wide, a little less than a half an inch. If I look at it a little further out, I haven't measured this piece before, it's probably going to be a little different. 435 and a little touch more. So this one is actually close to round. It's going to be a lot closer in just a minute. I'm going to first cut off the edge, and if you want to get in here, if you want to get from this side, you can see the edge is not flat. And so the first thing a machinist does is turn that off to make it exactly flat so that you can zero in with something to hold that with a little hole here to keep it good and steady. You can't do that unless it's flat. So we're going to start with that. It's going to make a little bit of noise. So you're probably wondering why I was only turning into the middle. Well, it's round. It's spinning at some 500 to 600 revolutions per minute. So as you turn the blade back and forth, it's taking the entire width. You never have to do the other side because you get that automatically. So now we have a rather round surface, and I'll show you why I did that here in just a second. The next absolutely standard step with any machining is to stick what's called a center in there and drill a centering hole. It'll take but a second. That hole is dead center, and into there I'm going to place what's called a dead center, meaning it doesn't move, because that will hold and stabilize that piece of ebonite. Here's my chuck here. I'm going to bring this out a little bit, which I now can do because I have a center in there holding it. So now that there's a center holding it, I can turn it smoothly. That's why I faced off the end. Okay, so we're getting ready to start actually cutting the ebonite, and just a couple of quick thoughts. First, why do I wear a mask? Lots of people don't. I need to wear a mask because for whatever reason, I tend to react to the very fine powder that cutting almost anything I cut throws up when I'm turning. And indeed, if I'm cutting metal on this, you have to use oil as a lubricant, and I react even worse to the oil. So I don't know what to tell you. I have to wear a mask. And one of the very few positive holdovers from COVID is that all of us have an excess of masks around, and these work perfectly, which I know because at the end of 3 or 4 days wearing this mask, it's pretty dirty on the outside. So I figure that's all stuff I'm not breathing. The cutting tools I use each one of them has a purpose, and there's a whole engineering science behind that, and I'm not an engineer. But I made this tool. It's made out of a form of tool steel called M-tool. It's a relatively soft steel, relatively meaning it'll cut all kinds of things as long as they're softer than it. But it has an angle underneath here that allows the heat of cutting to dissipate and gives room for what I'm cutting off to move away, and it gives a cutting edge. If you hit this thing with your finger at 300 or 400 or 500 RPMs, it'll take off a good chunk of your finger, but you regulate that very carefully by how deeply you cut, or in my case, don't cut. Real estate is a little bit tight here, so I'm going to move out and give myself a little bit more room here. There we go. So now when I'm going to be cutting this down a little bit, and you measure that in thousandths of an inch. Excuse the noise, but lathes tend to make a little bit of noise. So now I'm going to cut 5 thousandths of an inch, which, because it's spinning, it's actually 10 thousandths of an inch, because it's taking it off from both sides simultaneously.
You can really smell the hard rubber now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Kind of nice, but I could see how it could get to it for a while.
Yeah, and now you can see how it wasn't even, because you can see where I cut, these were the thicker side, and as it spun, because I only had it set for 5 thousandths of an inch at any given space, it didn't even touch this. So that's how you know, and if in the end I have to fit this in, and I'll show you a section. Where did I put that gripping section I just had? This is a gripping section for a late 1920s LeBoeuf 90. And I made it from scratch using this same material, a slightly better quality of it. And you can see it is almost done. I just have to finish polishing this tapered portion so that it feels normal when you grip it. But all these other sides were cut using this chuck and this cutting tool to very precise measurements. And inside is exactly the amount of space that I need for the feed and the nib.
How did you figure that out?
I figured that out using basically two tools. This tool, and in fact I have another one here on a stand. I'll bring it over. This is called a vernier micrometer.
Mm-hmm.
They've been around since the 1800s. In this form, micrometer measurement has been around for, I believe, since the early 1700s. This base just holds it. It looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, if you can zero in here, it measures up to 10,000ths of a 10,000th of an inch. By each one of those numbered marks is a tenth of an inch. Those are divided into 4 quadrants for 250 thousandths of an inch, or each quarter of an inch.
Yeah.
As you move up this scale, you get thousands. You can see those numbers, thousands of an inch leading up to the 25, which is that mark. And there is even this axis right here, which is 10,000th of an inch. This micrometer is far more accurate than my lathe is, than any lathe I will touch in my career. I used to have a true 1940s shop lathe, which I sold last November, and it was about as accurate as this one is. I can plan on which thousandth of an inch. A thousandth of an inch is basically half of most people's hair, an individual hair. Gray and silver hairs are usually a little bit thinner, but they're usually about 2 thousandths of an inch thick. So we're talking about hair thickness here. I can usually plan to the thousandth of an inch. Luckily for doing pen work, the kind of accuracy I need is generally to be within 5 thousandths of an inch, and sometimes a little bit finer than that if I want a particular fit for a feed and nib inside a section. To fit this is the sack nipple.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a sack size is 1/64th of an inch.
Yeah.
1/64th of an inch is pretty big in thousandths of an inch, so I don't have to be that accurate because I know I can pretty well cut that down. The gripping portion for the barrel, which is this portion, has to be a bit more accurate because there I'm down to 3 or 4 thousandths of an inch depending on how tight I want that barrel to fit. And also sometimes when I'm presented with a barrel and when I'm presented with a pen that I need to restore and I get the barrel off the section and it's just too tight, I'll bring that section over here to the lathe and shave off a couple of thousandths of an inch. Not more than that, but that helps get it back on again without it being too loose. So we're talking about small measurements making a large difference, and that matters a tremendous amount.
I have an ulterior motive for why I'm visiting Tim today, and that's because my vintage Aurora 88 needs some attention. The filling system's a little weak, and Tim has a lot of experience restoring these pens. So I brought my vintage Aurora 88 for him to have a look at, take apart, and see what's going on.
So we're in Rome, and you go around to these different pen shops. Not all of them were like specifically for fountain pens, but there was in a number of these shops these displays with all vintage Aurora pens and ephemera. So I was like going around seeing all these pen shop displays with the vintage pens, the ads for the vintage pens, stands, stuff that they used in the shop forever, and it was like kind of incredible. And I came back and I was like, man, I've been missing out on vintage Auroras. Now I had the 88 for a while, but I suddenly was checking out the duo carts and the 98, the 98 piston with the little like thing,
I have one.
yeah, they're absolutely fantastic. So, I was like, and I know you like them, so I figured
I love them.
let's talk about what these are and what makes them special.
Okay. I have been a fan of Aurora pens for a good decade, for Aurora vintage pens for a good decade. And my love of the Aurora goes back to their Novum, which was a pre-World War II pen. Absolutely delightful, with a piston that is operated from the bottom of the barrel. They are interesting to take apart. Sometimes interesting, like the French Revolution was interesting, but they are interesting to take apart. They are wonderful writers, and they are very fragile pens. In fact, I have two from a friend to restore that have deep cracks, if they're not already broken, all the way through the barrels. And just from the passage of time and very old celluloid. So I don't know what's going to happen with those. I'm hoping to get to those in the next year. But the post-war Aurora 88 generation to me is fascinating, both because of the pens themselves, but also because of their history. And I'm a deep fan of wartime and post-wartime history in Europe and in the States. Have studied it a great deal, and much like the pens of that era. Well, I think all of your viewers are going to know about something about the history of Parker 51s, but I guess what they may not know is that when in the late 40s and the early 50s, when American soldiers again swarmed all over Europe, this time as part of the Marshall Plan, many of them were carrying Parker 51s, which became something of a rage in Italy, which had not seen new consumer goods for the better part of a decade. And so as Aurora was building itself back up again, as Aurora was building itself back up again, literally rebuilding its bombed out factory, they were casting about for an idea of how to restart their company. The 88 is where they landed, and it bears an uncanny resemblance to a Parker 51. Metal cap, they all had them. A hooded nib, which was new to Italian pens, and the metal ring holding gripping section and barrel together. The the pure black look, although most of the early gripping sections were hard rubber, were ebonite, and many of the blind caps were ebonite. They looked to them like Parker 51s. Inside, however, these are Italian pens. They are piston filled, which American pens just have not yet gotten around to, and in many ways still haven't gotten around to. Piston filled pens are the classic pen of finer pens in Italy, and from working pens to very nice pens in Germany as well. In Germany, they're called Kolbenfiller. They were the dominant tradition. And so Aurora came up with this pen, which was actually pretty wonderful. Now I have two of them here. One of these is Joshua's. He and I have always enjoyed the times when we can get together here in my shop, where I always need him to do a little bit of his magic on a couple of pens of mine, and he has a way of asking questions that tend to be far more sophisticated than they used to be, which is good for both of us, since we both know a whole lot more than we did in our earlier years. So this time he brought in an Aurora 88 for me to restore. I have two of them here because one of the lessons you learn is that pens don't always come apart on command. And sometimes you have to soak them, heat them, soak them for a couple of days more. In fact, I just pulled this out of my ultrasonic cleaner here, and here's another one that it's with. Here is a half of the business end of a Parker Vacuumatic, and as you can see, the business end of a Parker 51. They have both spent the last couple of days in that ultrasonic heating up as I'm working to keep it loose. to get it loose so I can take them apart. Those are both pens that will eventually give up their grip, and forcing it too early leaves you with a broken pen. Since they're not mine, I choose to take the long route and let them come apart when they're ready. Well, these can be another one like that, and they come apart when they're willing to. Joshua's, I have to say, since he got here an hour or so ago, I've been heating it with my two heaters here. Here's the safer one. This is from Michael's, and it was $18. I go through them every couple of years, and I always have a spare ready to go. And the good one that you have to be careful with, because you can burn a good chunk of your hand and ignite whatever pen you're using it with if you're not careful. And in the hour or so that Josh has been here, this pen is not yet ready to give up its section. So we're going to work with one of mine, same generation. And I'll tell you in a minute if they're the same age. Only Parker 88s. I don't know if you can zero in here and see this. Let's do yours. Have serial numbers. Schaefer put numbers on its nibs back in the 20s and 30s. I don't know what those numbers ever meant. I think some people know what they mean. I'm not one of them. But Aurora actually used serial numbers that are meaningful. They didn't tell the rest of the world what they corresponded to in time, and there's been some estimate of 250,000 to 300 pens a year. If those are true, Joshua's number is 315, I think, 311, something like that. I can take a slightly better look and tell you it's going to be close to that, 315, 311. It's a 6-digit number starting with a 3. This is probably, if we believe that 1949 was the first year that they went public with the 88, this is probably a late 49, early 1950 pen. Of course, the error with the numbers grows with time, and we don't know what the truth is. Mine is a 7-digit one. It's a 126,9 thousandths number 9. So this is somewhere in 3 to 4 years worth. This is an early 1950s model. It is what it is. They don't really mean that much. But you get to know if a pen is an early 88 or a later one. Both of them have the same imprint. These were imprinted by a chasing machine, which is different from a stamping machine. It's a machine that actually cuts the imprint out. And it was the same, I believe, the same with the serial number. And that is the total imprint on a Aurora 88 pen. They did not do ever, to my knowledge, a barrel imprint. One sees it on the section. So the first thing that one always wants to do with an 88 is see if you can fix the pen the quick way rather than the long way. The long way to do it is to knock out this little plug up here in the back of the blind cap. That's the key to success, is getting that little plug out there, and then that opens up the rest of the pen inside. I learned a while ago that if you're lucky and you can unscrew the section, you can get at, oh, that's interesting. There's no piston in there. So Josh's pen was not ready to be disassembled. So I pulled one of mine that is not quite ready to go yet out of its box, and it was ready to disassemble. So we're going to release the section. This can now just be dropped in the ultrasonic and cleaned. There's never, I have a general belief of not fixing what doesn't need to be, of not fixing what isn't broken.
Yeah.
And so I will often not take apart the section on any fountain pen. I'll give it a good flushing out. I'll really clean it carefully, but I don't punch nibs and feeds out unless they need it.
Yeah.
Many times I found, particularly with older pens, I restore a lot of old Schaefers, for instance, they find homes in their sections, and it's not always easy to recognize its home and where it was when you're putting it back in.
Yeah, no, I
And
mean the hard rubber definitely forms around over time. I
yeah,
mean, you're talking about something like 100 years. Like
right.
rubber is something that's moving,
And you
even if
remember
you
we
can't
were
see it.
talking about thousandths of an inch. So
Yeah.
thousandths of an inch is hard to tell. So the difference, remember with this piece, with the
Yeah.
piece in the lathe where you couldn't even see because it was off by a few thousandths.
Yeah.
It's the same thing here. So if the nib is working fine and I can dunk it in water and lift it above the water and have it just drip out, I know that it's probably going to be flowing all right.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean there won't ever be a problem, and it doesn't mean that when I get it all back together I won't have a problem with it, but at least if I don't see anything obvious from the beginning, one of my rules is to not fix it if it's not patently broken.
And I think my experience, limited though it is with the Auroras, is that these generally are in pretty good shape as a unit, right? That really the problem, the challenge becomes repairing the piston, which you have right there.
True, absolutely true. Although I have many where there are real problems in there, and I've been for years trying to stockpile parts for Aurora 88s, but they're a challenge. People don't want to give them up.
Yeah.
And so even sources in Italy don't like giving them up, where there are as many Aurora 88s around as there have been Parker 51s here.
Yeah.
Not as many as Esterbrook's, but definitely as many as Parker 51s.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what the piston looks like. And frankly, it is not terribly dissimilar to many thousands of other pistons. It's a simple piece of plastic. Sometimes they're celluloid, sometimes they're other plastics. Inside, it's threaded for the piston arm inside here. And we got lucky. We don't have to take the entire pen apart. There are about 8 parts in here that have to be taken apart otherwise, and maybe in a future segment we'll do that. But for this one, we just want to see basically how it works. There's an arm inside there, and if you hold tight for 1 second, I'll show you one of those. I have some spare parts here. Through several parts, that arm is hooked in up here into the cap where you advance it. This turns, it's threaded, so it is connected to this piston. As the whole thing turns, it turns the piston and it brings it against another thread. It brings it up or down in the pen as you fill it and empty it. Pretty simple mechanism all in all. And if you're adventurous, this really is no different from the basic German Kolben filler, although their threaded units were slightly different. But the principle is generally the same. Many Italian pens, some of the more complicated ones, are a whole lot more complicated than this, however, and you don't always know because they're not published what you're going to see until you get in there. And it's also similar to the higher end Mont Blancs, where sometimes there are mysteries until you get inside and you have to figure out what you have.
Do you feel, in your experience, because I know you have a whole box of them, you've restored a bunch, that once you get it to the point where everything is working, like it'll have some amount of longevity, like it's not going to fail you again and again as long as you take care of it?
Well, one of the brilliant things about piston-driven pens is the part that really matters are these. There are 2 gaskets here, 2 round O-rings, and a nut on top. No sacks, no diaphragms, nothing really to wear out. This is simply threaded onto the tip of that. The threads that hold this together are pretty fragile. Here's one where you can see what it looks like. I'm starting to make replacements for these parts on my lathe that
Mhm.
fit inside here. This is all a single part.
Mhm.
And a friend of mine has been trying to 3D print these shafts for replacements for me, but getting the internal threads of this
Mhm.
done on a 3D printer is hugely challenging, and he hasn't
Yeah.
beaten that yet. However, there's nothing here to really break.
Yeah.
And once, if you use it for 20 years, the gaskets may wear down. And in fact, when you get them, these are a stack of, I believe, 7 different gaskets that we can't get today. So we replace them with perfectly sized O-rings, put some silicone grease on it, and put it back together, and it's done.
So you're not. They're not. You're not. So like this here, right, is cork.
I could use cork. I make corks. That's a cork that I made that I just haven't used yet. Again, I cut corks on my lathe, and there are already at least a couple of very good YouTube videos about cutting corks. Ziamak Sahedi in Mumbai has a very good video about cutting cork, and he doesn't have a lathe, so he cuts it using his Dremel.
Mm-hmm.
And before that, he does it by hand. But you can use corks. Aurora 88s did not ever have corks. My practice is generally to replace cork with cork. So if I'm doing an older Italian pen or a German pen that has a cork, I try to replace it with cork.
So these are stacked.
Those are stacked 2 O-rings of exactly the right diameter that fit onto this part right here. And then that nut on top is made out of hard rubber, and that screws on.
Yeah. Okay. So that like kind of retains it.
It holds the whole thing together.
All right.
And this is a couple tenths of a millimeter skinnier than the O-rings.
Yeah.
And the O-rings are an exact fit into the inside of the barrel. Yeah. Between the O-rings leave just enough room for a little bit of silicone grease to slide up and down on the piston. That's the entire thing. Yeah. It's nowhere nearly as complicated as a Vacuumatic or a Schaefer Vacfill or Schaefer Snorkel, which was 2 filling mechanisms in one.
Well, the Vacuumatic is actually it's simple. It is somewhat simple compared to this.
It's simple in that it fills directly into the barrel. It is not simple in everything that it takes to get one of these mechanisms to have all of its parts working, then to fit the diaphragm to it.
Yeah.
Because it has to fit inside there.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot to it. American manufacturing was more complex to get to a desired end. The Italians have also had their extravagances of engineering, but not the Aurora 88s. These were meant to be every person's pens, and they're simple devices, and they're just incredibly well made. There is a 1960s pen called the Reserva Magica, which is a Aurora 88, the last generation of Aurora 88, and it is more complicated. But otherwise, the 3 or 4 generations before that all worked in this manner.
Yeah. This end is what goes into the knob.
If you're lucky enough to have gotten it apart without...
Well, mine looks like someone had already been in there, right?
Yeah, somebody has been in here before. They went in there with a punch and they filled it. I generally go in with a very skinny drill bit. I stabilize the pen, go with a very skinny drill bit, drill as little as I can to pull that plug out. More often than not, I stick it on the lathe, and here's a little piece of it right here. This is ebonite, and I turn a little bit more of this small piece of scrap ebonite. I turn that down to form that little piece that goes on the top, and then I fit it in for each pen.
Okay. So you make a replacement.
I make a replacement. Yeah. It takes 15 minutes.
Yeah. All right.
And I, one of the reasons for me to have the lathe is I realized that there are certain time savings. It takes me less time to make one than to try and fit that one back in.
Yeah.
Works for me. Does it justify the cost of a lathe? Nothing does individually. You add it all up and it does.
Yeah.
So this is the entire working mechanism. Granted, up in this end, and perhaps with our next episode, we can take one apart completely. This is held up by a piece that fits over it. This piece, and you see that tiny hole here, fits into a nut, fits over it. That nut has a hole in it which fits through that shaft. That nut is what you're actually turning when you turn this blind cap, which fits over the nut. And one of the tricks you learn how to do is to push that pin out without turning the whole thing, because it usually the first thing it wants to do is turn out of your way.
Yeah.
And of course, you have to take it for granted that the first 10 times you do it, you lose the pin.
Yeah.
So I have surgical steel here, and I build my own pins whenever I need one. It all works. It works as a mechanism. One of the main advantages of a Parker 88 is that all of these parts are interchangeable.
You mean the Aurora 88?
Or the Aurora 88. They are like, I was thinking Parker 51. They are like Parker 51s in that you can build a mongrel pen.
Yeah.
And every so often I do that, and I tell my customers on my website that that a couple of these parts have been replaced from others.
Yeah.
Or what I normally tell them is I believe these are all the original parts that came with the pen.
So with this, the easiest way, going back to kind of where we started, is you take off the section, it unscrews, as you can see, it pretty much comes off in the unit when it's willing to go. And then to advance the piston far enough to take it out, rather than having to open up the back.
You advance the piston further than it wants to go. Yeah. You advance it past the end.
So, this pen right here you're holding has this in it, right? Like this is still in
which
there.
is why it didn't.
Yeah, well, it didn't want to go in. All right, here.
So you advance it further than the end, and sometimes, for me, 5 or 6 times out of 10, you're lucky that you can grab onto that and just pull it out.
Yeah, no, I don't
want to get it all the way back in because it came from another pen.
Well, I mean,
it'll come out.
Put it back in.
It'll come back out. It'll shake out.
Yeah.
I'll get it out later.
Yeah.
But it's a simple mechanism. Again, I could take the whole thing apart every time, but it rarely needs it. Nothing ever goes wrong with these parts.
Yeah.
So why take it apart?
Yeah.
For me, it's like taking apart a Parker 51 cap.
Yeah.
Why bother? It's got a bunch of parts in there. Why take it apart?
Yeah.
I may not be able to get it back together again.
Yeah. So actually, let's talk about the caps for a second. So first of all, one thing that I know, I have limited knowledge of this model, the different generations of different caps, right? So this one, Tim and I have a similar cap for our pens here, but you can see, I'll show you in a second, that different generations had different caps.
Here is the same the next generation. This is the 88P with the plug in the top of the cap, and that's called the Nic Argenta. It's made of, it's not silver, it's steel, but it's chrome. Otherwise, identical pen. And here is the next generation with the sloped cap and the recessed clip. And this is the 98 with the Reserva Magica. It is meant to fill by pushing that button. It came to me with the button mechanism. It's actually a piston that operates. It doesn't work.
Oh.
So what you do is unscrew it.
Yeah, see, I have the opposite. I have a piston in mine that works, but you can't unscrew it.
Oh.
Yeah.
So this works. If you push that whole thing in, it will work, but I can't get it to, it turns.
Oh, I see.
There's a cam in there that turns it. It's not an uncomplicated pen. At that point, Aurora was beginning to cast about for its future. And like every other pen manufacturer, it got more complicated. The 98s, the 98s weren't around for long. and they soon moved to cartridge pens, the duo cart.
Yeah. Which now there's a modern duo cart you can
Right.
get, but
Here we are.
you don't have that because I always like.
No,
I
I
was
don't.
like the thing I always liked about the vintage ones is that there's like an interesting scaling between the barrel and the cap. Like the body is much bigger and the cap is like for some reason shorter. They changed the aesthetics a bit, but it
They changed the aesthetics because inside the body they needed to fit 2 cartridges.
yeah. Oh yeah, because they do it back to back.
That's where the name
right?
comes
yeah,
from.
Yeah, duo. That makes sense. The So one thing have you ever do these caps come apart? I mean, I think
In theory, they do. I've never taken one apart, and I've never had to take one apart.
And then do you know, is the clutch mechanism in here like a 51, or is it? Because I always feel like this one, that's old and a little beat up, it doesn't really have anything that's grabbing that ring other than the cap itself.
What's grabbing the ring is the cap against that ring.
Yeah, and you can
And
actually see in my pen.
there is a bit of a clutch in there, certainly, but it's really just friction against that ring.
And you can even see that on mine, there's like a
Yeah.
little indentation where probably it got knocked around or someone squeezed or something. And
there is a real difference between the Parker 51 and the Aurora 88. Parker 51s were mostly built when there was a lot of metal around in the United States for consumer purchases. Not so in Italy. During the early years of the Aurora 88, they had major shortages. So these caps are pretty thin, and you will see quite a few of them with dents, reverse dents like this, and sometimes not this one, sometimes even a break in the metal because they're very thin.
Yeah, and my clip is a little off. Like
it happens.
Unbend it.
It happens.
To get that dip out there.
Yeah.
But all that being said, these are great pens, right? Like
these are
the nib on mine is just there was a point the piston needs to get repaired, but the nib I have is like got tremendous.
They're great nibs. There are, I think, 17 different nibs that they listed. I've had the flexible ones. I've had the medium ones. Certainly the fine ones. I've never had or seen one of the extra fines. And I believe they even made, you'd know better, they even made some oblique nibs, and I've never seen one of those.
I've never seen the oblique. I have one that was sold. It's a 98. It's not one of these. It's sold as a broad. I don't know if that is accurate. I gotta I've never taken the loop to it to check it out.
Right.
But cap. But I think the Nick Argento one you just had.
It's right there on the left.
This one's yours, right?
Yep.
This one, I looked at it and it looked broad, but the tines are a little spread because
dip away.
Well, but this one is. Here, you can get the focus. This one it's a little bit bent, so I don't know if you straightened it out and then.
I haven't.
Yeah. The other thing they did with some of the later models is they had these matte finishes, right? And that is writing very wet, and I think it's just because the tines are very much open.
Well, feel free to adjust.
I know. Maybe we'll off camera a few minutes. Right.
Take a try of that. There are Italian pens and Italian pens, and you should get the feel for that. It's a little Omas from the late 1950s. It's a 360 brevet from the 360 family, and it's just it's one of the few pens that I've actually bought for myself, and I fell in love with it. And I wear it often when I'm wearing a decent shirt. Part of being retired means I'm not wearing a decent shirt all the time, so I don't carry that in a pocket it would just slip into. But I just love the way it writes.
Yeah, that is lovely.
And it has a big brother. This is from 1990. It is the Italia 90, which was made to commemorate the World Cup in Italy in 1990, and it is the green of the football pitch. And this was a present. This was given to me some years ago, and I have a dozen or so pens that I will probably never sell, even though I'm thinning my collection bit by bit. This is one of the ones that stays.
This is
I
terrific.
love it.
Yeah, that is something special.
It is something.
I mean, wow. Okay.
And if you have any taste for a modern pen, you know how narrow my tastes are. As I say in my website, this is a part of a small subset of the smallest subset I have, which is
Yeah.
a high-end modern pen that I bought for myself.
Yeah. This is the
New, brand new.
Justice.
This is the Justice 95 by Pilot.
Yeah.
And it is probably the only pen that I own that to me is perfect in every respect. It's just a phenomenal pen.
So I'm surprised. I mean, it's a beautiful writer.
Yeah.
I when I think of you and your, what your preferences are, I'm surprised that this caught your fancy because it feels out of step. But I mean, I get why. It's a beautiful writer.
Are we on camera here?
Yeah, yeah, we are.
All right. Well, I got that as a retirement present.
Okay.
I bought it for myself, and it was a complicated story of how it came about it, but it was part of a 3-part deal where I ended up having the opportunity to buy that, and a smaller pen was not available.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, all right, I've not had one of these. Let me give it a shot.
Yeah.
And I bought it thinking, oh, if I don't like it, I'll sell it. And I fell in love with it. And yes, it's a big pen.
Yeah. No, it's great. One of the things I love about it, I mean, the nib is phenomenal, but I also like that it has that
The
mock
finish, chasing, the gold,
yeah,
everything about it, and the little adjustment it has
yeah,
for adjusting hard to soft actually works.
yeah,
I mean, not within a huge range,
yeah,
but it works.
yeah. So this is a little softer now. Yeah, you can. I mean, yeah, you can see it.
It works.
Totally works. All right, can we? What I would love to show folks is some of your French pens.
Okay.
Because I remember actually over a decade ago, you showing me your
Mm-hmm.
Bayard that you restored, and looking at it and
Just
being
happened to have it in my hand.
overwhelmed. So, I guess can we give the folks at home a little bit on Bayard
Sure.
and what's special about it?
Hang on 1 second here. I'm pulling a couple of others out. I have 4 that I'll happily show.
All right, I think we got to make room.
One of them is this Bayard 560, and it's Bayard, not Bayard.
Okay, well now that's me being
most French nouns and names do not pronounce the last consonant, so it is Bayard. Bayard was a venerable company, industrial manufacturer in France. They made all kinds of things. But for me, the 2 things that I thought were the most interesting were their alarm clocks and their pens.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been able to actually land a Bayard clock at a price I'm willing to pay, but someday I will. And I'm going to Paris in October for a week, and I'm hoping to score one there.
Yeah.
But this is the 560. It's a pen from the 1950s and 60s. French pens are different from Italian pens and English pens and German pens and certainly American pens. It's sometimes hard to tell when they were made. The French pen industry was a little bit more understated, and now it's a completely different role. But it's a very solidly made pen, and it carries a Lido nib. Lido was a well-known manufacturer of nibs and other pen parts, and I believe it may have been owned at one point by Bayard. But their clips were characteristic. They look like bow ties
Mm-hmm.
or neckties, and carried various designs, but they all had that shape. This is a simple pen. It's a lovely writer. It has never leaked. I use it. It gets its turn for a fill every 2 or 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I just love it.
Yeah.
Next to it, let's do this one. Oh, I have another one too, actually.
Yeah.
I have an older one. I need a moment here to find it. Here we are.
So this the celluloid one is a gold star, right? Or gold starry.
The celluloid one is a gold starry, and if perhaps you're thinking it looks very much like a Conway Stewart, it is because it was made by Conway Stewart.
Oh, interesting.
Conway Stewart, in the early years into the 1930s, had a contract with a company called Gold Starry, a French company. I don't know where the name came from and why it's in English, that they made pens for them. And the Gold Starry nibs were usually not the classic Conway Stewart super soft, broad nibs,
Mm-hmm.
but they're lovely writers. But that has the look and feel of a true Conway Stewart pen. But it's a French pen,
Yeah.
and it has French detailing, which is a little bit less. I actually don't know if there's a jewel missing there because I've never seen that model
Yeah.
anywhere. This pen is almost not usable because it is made of wrapped celluloid,
Mm-hmm.
and where they didn't pour it, they took celluloid sheets and wrapped them on the bias, and the wrapping is starting to come apart.
Mm.
And I worry about taking it out,
Yeah.
but it lives among my pens that don't get use, and so I've also just never swaged down the
Yeah.
cap rings, so they're a little loose, but it just looks so
Yeah.
nice.
I feel like my French pens, there's always issues with the cap rings. I don't know what it is.
It's just part of being French.
Yeah.
I
And
have
a
two,
lot of Bayards are like that too.
exactly. I have two others that are two wartime pens. One of them looks suspiciously like a Parker Duofold,
Yeah.
the one in your hand.
Yeah.
And in fact, it is everything Parker Duofold, but by name. During World War II, the Nazis forbade import of anything from the Allied powers.
Mm.
And Parker, which had been in France and certainly was close by in England, had a large foothold in France, and so they made a contract with a man who imported parts and named them Plexors. So it has what clearly looks like an English duofold
Yeah.
clip and body, slightly different from the American full-size duofold. But if you look at that carefully, it says Plexor, not Parker.
Yeah.
And of course, it says Plexor and with the proper French insignia in the imprint. So it's a French pen.
Yeah.
It's really an English pen, but it's a French pen.
Yeah.
And the English and the French have never been close friends, but there were times when they moved goods between them, and this was one. It's a nice pen. It's more a curiosity, a wartime curiosity for me. And at some point, I'll probably let that go to a wartime scholar or somebody who really wants it. Until then, I'm going to keep it and use it. I love it.
So it's a steel nib, right?
Steel nib, absolutely.
Yeah.
In all of Europe, all of Nazi Europe during the war, and particularly with German pens, you didn't find gold nibs because it's not just that gold was scarce. The Nazis impounded all of it and didn't allow the use of any gold, which is where the wonderful German steel nibs like the Degussas came from.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the premier French pen makers is the Edacoto. And in fact, if you want to focus over here, I have an ad from a pen that is one of my holy grails, the Edacoto 87. And I would love to lay my hands on a transparent, which was a almost completely transparent Edacoto. I need to polish that nib. How dare that get that way?
But it's got a Waterman nib, right?
It's got a Waterman nib. It came to me that way. That is the largest pen made in France during World War II. It's an 87. I have seen photos of a 98. I've never seen the pen, but this is a very large pen for a French pen. Most of them were, this Bayard is the typical
Mm-hmm.
French size.
Yeah.
It's quite a bit larger.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And the Edacotos are wonderful pens.
Yeah.
The supers are, yes, there's a little bit of artistic license in here. Most of them look like this pencil, but the supers have this wonderful transparency, including a plaid pattern transparency, which a lot of manufacturers copied the high-end Watermans, particularly in Italy, copied the high-end Watermans,
Mm-hmm.
the high-end Vacuumatics. But this is its own particular finish in that barrel. And someday I'll find one.
Yeah. And they were their own factory. It wasn't like...
I don't know much about Edacoto. There's not a whole lot published about them, but yes, they were their own manufacturer.
And you don't have... Do you have a mallet?
I have two Mellets. They are both in my very large work in progress and project box over there to your right. Those are all future projects. I had a third Mallet, but I sold it. In case anybody's interested, this is a 1950. The body is not held on yet. This is a 1950s scale model of a 1950s Renault Dauphin. It is a wonderful little car, about the length and size of a VW Beetle. They were all over France. And this is the only 1/24th scale model of it ever made.
Mm.
And I came across it built with nail polish a couple of years ago, and I've been resuscitating it ever since. It has almost no detail.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to get it to go together and line up and stay together and get the trim on. And one of these days I'll actually finish it.
It's interesting because on camera it looks much more yellow.
Oh, this is very yellow.
No, but I mean, to my eye,
oh, really?
I'm seeing on the camera, it's much more yellow looking, like almost like Dick Tracy yellow. Whereas this in person, it's a little more, I guess the word's muted. I don't know. It's not as bright. I'll show you when we're done filming.
Well, it's under 5500K lighting,
Yeah.
so it's under a neutral white lighting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also build scale car models and have for 50 years.
That's what I remember when we first met and you were showing me vintage pens that you were doing. The thing that was like really impressed me was like when you would polish these things so beautifully. It was like perfect. It wasn't too shiny. It wasn't too matte or whatever.
Yeah.
It was like right where you wanted it. And I think that was part of a function of your skills gained through modeling.
Yeah, I mean, I've been building models far longer than I've worked on pens.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, for me, the perfect finish on a pen is how I think it looked when it came out of the factory.
Yeah.
Not perfect today.
Yeah.
And so I don't use polishes. I don't use waxes. I try to not use petrochemicals in any of it. I notice you're looking at my Noxons and all of my other things up there. Those are almost all for my model work and not for pen work.
Yeah.
Most of the work I do is a bit of secret sauce and a lot of just hand work.
Yeah.
I will use a little bit of rouge on a grinding wheel and polish some of it, but it's really hand work that gets it where I want it to be. There are some restorers who will go for a very high shine. That to me is frankly unnatural.
Yeah.
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, however.
Yeah.
I have some customers who tell me they'd like my pens to be a little shinier, and I tell them, that sounds great. Feel free to do whatever you like with it when it's your pen. This is the way I build pens. I
mean, like I'm looking at the Edacoto, right? I don't know what type of...
and I haven't polished that in probably 15 years.
Yeah. But, I mean, it looks to me like it would if it was sitting in a pen case in a pen store. Like that, you know what I mean? Like I'm not...
Yeah.
It doesn't look off to me.
Right.
Like you sometimes see like a Parker 51 looks like a candle. You know, almost like it's like melting wax.
Right. And well,
And this
sometimes
stuff
it is wax.
Yeah.
I mean, frankly, I can tell one just by looking at it and by holding it in my hand.
Yeah.
Finishes that are applied feel like finish. You can tell a wax finish on an
Yeah.
automobile.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and that's just not my taste.
Yeah.
What I do try to do is to get under all of the grime, under the use wear, and under the obvious scratches and shocks that pens take in their sometimes long histories.
Yeah.
Not all of it is achievable, but I do my best to get past that.
Yeah. On the channel, I've talked to folks about just using like a sunshine cloth in the context of you pick up a pen, it's a little bit scuffed up, but
Right.
it's not a reason not to get it because, you know, like if you take, like, here's my 88, right? Like if you just on the celluloid, give it a little bit of...
Right. A sunshine cloth, sunshine is a trade name in the jewelry field for a light abrasive that is meant to polish metal.
Yeah.
It works. It's embedded in those claws. You can see that one has been used for for several years. I love the sunshine claws when they're almost used up, when there's almost nothing left in them.
Yeah.
For me, the rule is always to do less rather than do more, because I can always come back and do more if I do less first.
Yeah.
Once you've done too much, you can't go back and undo that. So I prefer to spend a little bit more time doing more rather than less.
Yeah. Well,
I
that's the
use
thing.
the sunshine claws quite a bit.
Yeah.
They are often my first offense in polishing a pen, but they're far from the last.
Yeah.
And I like them a lot. They're available from a variety of sources. I would suggest you buy one from a pen source. However, I know Ron Zorn sells them from his website.
Yeah.
Because Amazon also sends them, but for pen things, I support pen people. But also, you know, it's the real thing.
Yeah, you can actually go into Sunshine and
you can buy directly from Sunshine.
And you know,
and there are jewelry. Rio Grande is a major jewelry supply wholesalers, and they sell Sunshine in a number of different ways.
Yeah,
I try to support the pen world as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, you'll save a little money on Amazon, but it may well not be the right thing.
Well, actually, so in an earlier video, I talked about I went to the Brimfield market, and I was showing all the pens that I got, and I was pointing out
Brimfield.
Yeah, Brimfield, it was great. And I got pencils and I got found pens, and I was showing, you know, like the pencils were a little tarnished, had little bits of grease or dirt on them. So I was talking about. So that led me to actually look at for people where to get sunshine cloths. And I saw, you know, you can get them on Amazon, but I think you can get like a 10-pack of sunshine cloths that will last you years. For, you know, like $30, which is like pretty good.
Oh, you want to polish this guy while you're at it?
Sure. I'm putting you to work in the shop.
This actually is my second fountain pen.
Mm-hmm.
I was given, this is a Mont Blanc 149, the Meisterstück. I was given this at the end of my high school years. It was my high school graduation present from my parents, who had just come back from their first trip to Europe together. And it has never been restored because it's never needed to be restored. It has also almost never been out of ink.
Yeah.
Right now you'll need to dip it because I just emptied it yesterday. And it has been on my desk since it fell out of my jacket pocket and that chip came out of the cap.
Oh, no.
I dropped it on 9th Avenue in front of the old Roosevelt Hospital many years ago when I was a hospital administrator. And at that point, I decided replacing that cap was not a priority. And it was going into my desk, and it has been on my desk ever since.
Yeah.
And it has never failed me. It has also signed both of my daughter's wedding certificates.
Yeah, so that's if you read like Richard Binder's website, they'll talk about like that you want to give your pen a steady diet of ink, and like no one really follows that as much as they
Oh, I
should
do.
anymore. No, I was going to say you actually have proven that that is what happens.
Right.
Like if you consistently use it, ink it, clean it
Yep.
whenever it needs it, etc., like it will last.
Good pens last forever.
Yeah, and I mean, I sometimes wonder, even like we're talking about the Parker Vacuumatic, right?
Yep.
Like if you used one Vacuumatic consistently, and you fed it the quote unquote steady diet of ink, you were, diligent about cleaning it if it looked like it was gunky, would that diaphragm last you 20 years?
Probably.
Yeah. Like it's not something like I have a Vacuumatic 51. I need to replace the diaphragm every few years, but that's because I'm not taking care of it properly. So, which is like a user error, not really a problem with the pen. So
I have two Parker 51s. I only own two of them because I don't think anybody needs to own more. Both of which I restored in 27 and 8, and they were among my first restorations. And they're on their first diaphragms. They've never needed replacement. Here's another fun one. This was my third fountain pen. I bought this my first week of college in Appleton, Wisconsin. It's a Pelikan 120, and it is, as opposed to pens that never need any restoration, these were not made to be used forever, I believe. This was made on a subcontract to Pelikan. And it's on, I believe, its third gripping section and at least its second cap. And I've restored that pen, I don't know how many times, but it also is 53 years old.
Yeah.
And gets a tremendous amount of use. That is my super reliable carry pen. Original nib.
Yeah.
And in
steel.
A Pelikan pistol steel nib. Pelikan you can use pretty much forever, and I don't think I've ever replaced the piston gasket inside.
Yeah.
I think I've replaced its main pieces, not its components.
No, I mean, I think, when they switch to rubber or plastic or whatever it is, silicone, those things they're like the plyglass things for Parker. Like they last a long time. So.
And by the way, you've seen this jar here. I've used this jar for a long time, but it's actually modern Waterman. It's not their Blue Noir old ink. This is their modern Waterman Serenity Blue, which is my shop ink. I go through I don't know, a half dozen bottles a year, and it gets used for everything. And I just keep refilling the same bottle because I love the bottle.
Pens and paper are single-user products. It's one person with one pen writing on that person's journal, paper, what have you. It's something we do alone. When I started this channel, I struggled a bit to communicate the way in which we find community through these types of solo-use objects. How we find community through things that we use alone. And the lesson from today's episode is not to try and tell you about it, but it's to actually show you that process in action. So whether it's two friends getting together to fix pens together, friends getting together to journal, friends getting together to sketch, it's the doing of something and creating something together that makes all the difference. It's the creating of something together that makes the experience all the more special.